Hello and welcome to the next season of What Happens in Marketing. I'm Tom Heaton with the Innovation Marketing Association in Las Vegas here, and I'm excited to welcome you to the podcast where we peel back the curtain and tell the stories behind the storytellers. We've been talking about some of the great marketers that have helped build Las Vegas over the last few years, decades and beyond. And I'm excited today because in the last few months, as we talk about the end of 2023 and into 2024, Las Vegas has had an incredible stretch. We've opened up the Sphere, a worldwide entertainment venue. We've hosted a Formula One Las Vegas Grand Prix event, and most recently, the Super Bowl, the biggest game in the country. And I'm excited because today we have a guest who has been a part of that and been a part of Las Vegas marketing as a whole. So please help me to welcome the Vice President of Digital Marketing and Social Media for the host committee for the Super Bowl, Ms. Richelle Rice. Welcome, Richelle. It's great to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we are fresh off the heels of the biggest game in the country being played here in Las Vegas, and you were at the helm of all the digital media and everything like that. Tell us right off the bat, if you had to describe the Super Bowl and how that went in, let's just say one sentence, how would you describe the Super Bowl experience for Las Vegas?
Well, first I want to say, I think that the Super Bowl is the most watched sporting event worldwide, not just the country. So it was really, really exciting to be a part of that. I think going into it, knowing that it was going to be one of the most watched sporting events worldwide, that all eyes would be on Vegas, was a lot of pressure. And in the end, Vegas and NFL, we came together. It was amazing. The entire experience was beyond my expectations. I think beyond a lot of people's expectations, and overall just a huge success.
That's fantastic. It's been a long road since we've heard the first announcement about the Super Bowl. And even when we think about how bringing sports to Las Vegas has unfolded over the last few decades, you've really been a staple in the Las Vegas marketing community for a long time now. I want to go back to some of the roots and some of the lessons that you've learned in your time here in Las Vegas. As we talk about some of our members that are out there, if you could maybe give some advice, as if you were giving yourself advice back when you first started, what would you tell yourself?
That's a really good question. I was actually just asked that question earlier in the week. When I moved to Vegas 20 years ago, I never imagined that I would still be in this market now, 20 years later. I came here for a 2-year contract to work with NBC News and thought it was going to be a blip in my career and in my life, right? Vegas has now become home, and it's become a place that I absolutely love. If I could say anything to myself 20 years ago, it would be to let go of who I thought I should be, embrace who I am. There are so many lessons that I have learned in the past, really my entire life, but I would say the 20 years here in Vegas, where instead of trying to be who I think I need to be for any of my jobs, whether my jobs in my career or in my personal life, as a mom, I call that a job too. I think if I wish that I had learned earlier on just to embrace who I am and stop trying to be somebody that I'm not, or not somebody that I'm not, trying to be something else, because I think that's what it should be.
Absolutely. I feel like Las Vegas can really thrive in that authentic feeling that we strive for as marketers, really being able to bring out the experience that everybody wants to have. And that starts with us as marketers. We have to be able to have that authentic identity. I love that. As you think about some of the key traits of maybe the people that you've worked with or that you've really strived to have in your career, what would it be that you'd say are the key traits you look for in marketers in Las Vegas and around the world?
I think that it would not be just marketers. If I could say, I think the key to any good human that I've learned just along my career and along my life is finding people who are focused on that kindness and that generosity. I think that goes a long way, and it's always reciprocated. And so throughout my career, of course, the paychecks are important, but success isn't just in that paycheck. It's really about the journey and the connections you make along the way. And that's something that I have seen here in Vegas for sure. And like I said, it's not just marketing. I think that's across the board in life.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way of looking at things. Definitely subscribe to the same thing. Just be a good person. If you can start off by doing that, then you really attract other good people that want to work with you. And it's a great way for, you're right, whether it's, your marketing, if you're in sales, you're in creative, accounting, everything like that, people want to work with other people who treat them well. And we're all able to move forward with positive energy. So I love that advice. And I'd love to kind of expand on that as you think about, taking not only just those traits, but maybe some of just the ways that people are operating now that are different than they have been. What are some of the successful, I guess I'd say, strategies that you've seen employed by maybe your team with a Super Bowl or others around town?
Yeah, I'd say something that I always try to teach any of my new employees or my interns or anybody that I work with is really that every interaction and every experience can contribute to your growth, contribute to your success. And so throughout my entire career, when I think back on marketing and even when I first moved to Vegas to work for NBC News, there are people that I've met along the way that would take a job or work who I had worked with that really focused on the 9 to 5 and didn't really think beyond that stereotypical day. And so in order to be successful, and the people that I have found myself surrounded with and have also seen become successful are people that that say yes. There's an opportunity that might be hard. There's a request to do something that isn't in your normal, your work job description, but saying yes and learning from those experiences have become so valuable. It also brings more connections, right? So I think that's something that is really, really important. Something that I strive to teach, like I said, every new employee, everywhere I go, that even if it's not, assigned to you, if somebody asks, can you do something? Or if you see something that needs to be done, just step up and offer, because you never know what that can lead to. It's going to help you, broaden your horizons and learn more than what, you originally signed up for your job. And it can make you a better person.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think we hear that echoed around in really successful organizations. I think of our friends over with the Golden Knights who have that culture of saying yes. And, that's a part of their Knights code that they really put in there. I know you've got experience in your past working with the Knights, and that is definitely something that you can tell the difference between the organizations that want to just kind of push forward and always say yes versus those who maybe hesitate a little bit more. And so having that culture to say yes, like I will go and I'll take that extra step. I'll take that extra opportunity to advance whatever skill set I need to be able to continue to learn. I think that's a great lesson for all of us to be able to take. Learning never stops. And I imagine that you probably know that even better than anybody else because you're in a field where social media, digital marketing, that's something that's changing on a regular basis. You've got to stay ahead of the trends. And I would ask you, in a very rapidly changing field like that, what do you do to learn and stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. First, you have to know if it's working, right? So it's important to always track your data. See if something's worked in the past and it stops, you'll know immediately if you're looking at your data on a regular basis. And then I look just outside of my industry, outside of my clients to see what other big corporations are doing, what's cutting edge, try and stay on top of podcasts or any of the latest blogs, right? So I think the key first is if it's not working, realize it immediately and start to figure out what you can do by seeing what other companies that look successful, that you've seen cool content or seen great ideas come from, and embrace it. So that's the only way to do it is to just not become complacent with a strategy or with a technique that you've done in the past. Just because it's worked a year ago or 5 years ago doesn't mean it's going to continue to work tomorrow. And stay on top of all the different social media platforms and trends, and there's so many things. So just continuing to explore what's out there. And honestly, I always like to go to my interns or my young employees and say, like, who do you follow? Who is it that you're looking at? And even if it's an influencer that is outside of any of my clients or any of my my verticals, I still want to go see what they're talking about and see what they're into, because you can always learn from that.
So knowing that there are so many things that are out there that we could potentially learn, how do you help from maybe preventing some of that overwhelming sense of there's so much to learn, I don't know where to start? Where do you offer maybe a strategy to prioritize what's important versus what may be a lower priority for somebody?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. I think the important thing to always remember for no matter what vertical or what client you're working with is to know what the ultimate outcome is. Who is the customer and who is the person you're trying to reach, and focusing on finding the right way to reach that customer. So it could be TikTok for one client or for one vertical, and it could be a podcast or an email marketing campaign for another. So the key is really to know who the target audience is and to stay focused on who you want to reach. Just because there's something great that pops up that's a cool new technology or a cool new platform, whatever it might be, if it's not the right target audience, don't focus on spending your time on learning it and getting and getting on top of that for your client if it's not the right output, right? If the audience that you're trying to reach is a 55-year-old male and there's a new something that comes up that's getting 20-year-olds, don't focus on that right now. Learn about it. I'm not saying ignore it because you're going to want to know it's going to evolve, but don't make it a priority until you have fully captured your audience with the other platforms that have already been established.
Makes total sense. Richelle, this is great advice. Love to dig into this a little bit more. We want to take a quick break here as we then start to get into a little bit more of the specifics around the Super Bowl and some of the experience that you've had there. So stick with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to What Happens in Marketing. I'm excited to be joined here by Richelle Rice, the Vice President of Digital Marketing and Social Media for the Las Vegas Super Bowl Host Committee. Richelle, we've heard a lot about your background and what you would give advice-wise to our audience. Let's really dig into the Super Bowl. You have an extensive background in sports and in marketing here in Las Vegas. Would love to hear just kind of how the whole process took shape about bringing the Super Bowl to the city and what your feelings were as the excitement kept to build up.
Yeah, the process of getting the Super Bowl to Las Vegas was really it was a few years long, and it was really brought by the LVCVA. So Lisa Motley and Brian Yost over there really led that charge and brought in Sam Joffrey, our CEO and president, to help put the bid together and work with the NFL to bring the Super Bowl here. I admittedly just started with the Super Bowl host committee right before Super Bowl 57 in January of last year. So I was able to go down to Phoenix and get some learnings from there to see how it went, to see how everything operates for the week before we brought the game here to Las Vegas. As far as my sports background, it's one of those things that I think is really interesting. When I went to college actually for communications and journalism, I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. And my first TV job in Yuma, Arizona, I realized sports broadcasting is not for me. I sat at the anchor desk and I butchered the name of a hockey player, and I thought, oh my goodness, I cannot do this. And I always loved football. I grew up watching football. I thought I wanted to work for the Chargers back then, and so. As my career path moved and I moved to Las Vegas, I covered crime for NBC and I worked for the police department and launched the social media for Las Vegas Metro. I figured that my path would either be somewhere along crime or somewhere in Vegas. And at the time when I moved here, Vegas didn't have a lot of sports. With that being said, over my career, I've been able to work with the Golden Knights, as you mentioned, when they came to town and helped them with their digital advertising. I was able to work with the PGA Tour for the Shriners Open for a few years and oversaw their social. Was able to be a part of the South Point 400 NASCAR race for 4 years, which was such a privilege and something that was so amazing. I remember when the Las Vegas Lights came to town, and I worked with the owner back then to launch their social media and their names of all of their channels. And so it was an interesting path because there was sports that just kept showing up throughout, even though it was something that I really focused on. And so fast forward to about a year and a half ago, when the opportunity, I saw this, I knew the Super Bowl was coming to town. I had just launched my own creative and advertising agency and was on my own. And when the opportunity popped up, it was one of those things that I thought, is this real? Is this an opportunity that, I could go after? And so long story short, it was. And to be able to see my career go first full circle where, when I'm in college, I thought I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. I wanted to work for an NFL team, quickly, changed my path and landed here in Vegas to be able to work on the biggest game with the NFL. And one of the, like I said, the most watched sporting events worldwide is such an amazing opportunity and something that I didn't take lightly. It was an amazing experience.
That's awesome. To hear just how that has come full circle for you too. It's always great. I think especially when we think about, people that are maybe just starting off in their careers, like, oh yeah, I might be going a different direction than I necessarily thought I wanted to. You can always get back to doing something that you love. I think that's a great lesson for all of us to have. I'd love to dig into some of the strategies. I know there's been some great stories coming out of what brought the Super Bowl here. Love to dig into that strategy and, if there's anything innovative or just how you went about that bringing the Super Bowl to life here for Las Vegas.
Yeah, the Super Bowl host committee, my main responsibility was digital marketing and social media. So that was all the social channels, the podcast, the newsletter, the website, and then working with the NFL for their marketing strategy for experience and opening night. But I also got to work closely with our community partners that and our community team is who I should say, to really share some of the stories about what's happening in market in Las Vegas surrounding the Super Bowl. So I was able to talk about the 200 businesses within the Business Connect program. They're local diverse businesses who had the opportunity to work or receive bids from the NFL for some of the games and some of the events that were happening in market. And it was great to be able to meet some of those folks and share those stories on social and on the podcast. There was a dozen NFL green events. So we were able to share stories about that lasting legacy that the NFL was leaving, not just in the city of Las Vegas. We did stuff up in Moapa, down at the Wash, city of North Las Vegas, and some stuff in Henderson. And it was really great to see the wide variety of different NFL green events that we got to cover. And one of the things that I really, really love doing, we got the opportunity to work on what was called the Super Bowl surprise. And so we had a select number of tickets that were distributed to deserving folks in market. And when I was asked if I could support it, I said, yes, of course, I'd love to tell the stories. And that developed into actually not just telling the stories, but helping create some of those moments. And so there were opportunities to say, we have, for example, there was a man named Jonas who had worked with the Grant and Gift for Autism Center. And they said, we want to surprise him with tickets. Do you have any ideas? So I was able to reach out to my friends at AEG and Kristen and said, hey, I think because I have some connections with the autism world, if we could find a magician that would be willing to work with us on this, it'd be great. And so we were able to craft a moment with David Blaine where we invited Jonas to meet David Blaine. He had no idea he was going to meet him. David Blaine taught him a magic trick and then gave away Super Bowl tickets. And we were able to capture that moment and then share it widely. It actually got picked up by national news. And so it's just really, really neat because I think, like I said earlier on, it wasn't just saying yes to, I will help share a story. It turned into, okay, let me actually create some moments, whether it be with Luke Bryan or David Blaine. There were so many amazing stories like that we got to share. And then last, on top of all of that, which was already amazing, there's a legacy program. So there was $3 million awarded to local nonprofits. And so that was a lot of money for about 100 different nonprofits. And so sharing those stories and talking about what those nonprofits are going to do with the money and what it's going to mean for them and what it's going to mean for our community moving forward was pretty spectacular.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's made a very lasting impact on this city. And really, talking about how formative this last 12 months has been for Las Vegas, we have shone brightly in the global spotlight. And it's fun to think about what we can do with this momentum going forward. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what's coming next for Las Vegas as we think about the NFL, the Super Bowl, and even beyond that.
Yeah, Vegas is evolving, and it's a community that I'm so proud to call home. We know we're going to have a Major League Baseball team coming to town. Hopefully we have an NBA team coming to town, and it's going to continue to help us grow, and it's going to help enhance our city and our community. And I have no doubt, based on how successful the Super Bowl was and what Commissioner Goodell said at the closing press conference, that we knocked it. We did a great job, and it's not a matter of if the Super Bowl is going to come back to Las Vegas. It's just a matter of when, and that's pretty awesome. That was our goal at the beginning of this, was to make sure that the NFL saw how great the Super Bowl was here and that they would want to come back, and to make sure the city felt like the NFL and the Super Bowl happened for us, not to us. And I think we successfully achieved both of those missions.
Richelle, this has been a fantastic conversation. It's been awesome to learn from some of the lessons that you've talked about and where you think that we're going with things. Let's put a bow on things here. Let's break it down. Let's go with 3 key takeaways that you would like our audience to hear as we're having this conversation.
Yeah. It's hard to narrow it down to three, but I think I have three good ones that I hope that everybody could take away. And the first would be to always look for creative solutions. I think for the Super Bowl, for any job you have in your career, there's going to be obstacles, and finding a creative solution is always the best option. Instead of saying no or I can't or giving up or throwing in the towel, just look for that creative solution. The second takeaway would be to be authentic, not just with the stories you're sharing and the work you're doing, but just overall being authentic is so important. And it really helps in the social space to make sure that you're connecting with your followers or with your customers. And in the real world, it just helps people understand that you're genuine. And then my last takeaway is something that I think I started with, and that is that generosity and kindness wins. That is why I am where I am in my career, and I think that is something that everybody should lead with is generosity and kindness. How can you take every interaction that you have so that it benefits the other person instead of you? And looking at it everything with that lens can only help you grow and help others. And that would be my third takeaway.
Those are fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing that. I think that's a great thing for us to wrap up on. Let's be creative. Let's go out there and let's make sure that we are being authentic with ourselves, and let's make sure that we're being generous and kind to each other. And that's going to be something that will help all of us. So Richelle, thank you very much for taking the time to help us see that story from another angle there. And we look forward to seeing more of your work as hopefully the Super Bowl comes back in the near future. And until then, we'll love seeing you around town as we say thank you very much for joining us on this episode of What Happens in Marketing. We look forward to seeing you on the next one. Take care.